Thank you all for tuning in to the Carolina Business Leaders Podcast, where we share stories of local impact makers who carved their path through perseverance, passion, and Carolina grit. Today's guest is Caroline Buxton Avinger, a distinguished keynote speaker and founder of Protocol SC, a leadership and communication coaching organization here in the Upstates. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank y'all for having me.
You're welcome.
And you're obviously in a very busy season pretty regularly, but right now you have, one of your daughters going to college, another at camp?
It's just a hot mess in my world right now.
And then you got the transition of the business, the new branding.
I'm in the middle of totally transitioning my business. My younger daughter is home for the summer from her freshman year at Carolina.
Okay.
My older daughter has just finished her gap year between Clemson and law school.
If you're running a small to mid-sized business, you know there's simply not enough hours in a day to take care of all of your business needs. From managing health insurance to payroll, procurement, advertising, you're going to need some help to get that initial momentum going. That's why I would partner with Questco. They take care of all the behind-the-scenes administrative and HR work, letting you focus on what truly matters, which is running your business. That's Questco, Questco. Visit Questco.net or call your local Questco representative Thomas Owens at 864-477-0843 to get started today.
So she leaves for law school in the fall. So I've got everyone home, I've got dorm room furniture, I've got apartment furniture, I'm stepping over all of it and still trying to run a business too.
Nice.
And I have to feed them occasionally.
There you go.
Could you share with us a little bit about what Protocol SC is and just your vision behind it?
Yeah, so I started Protocol in, I think it was 2008, 2009, right when there was an economic crash.
Perfect timing.
Great timing on my part. But I was working at a company that did public speaking training. Okay. So I was there. This seemed like a natural extension of that, going into business etiquette. I went to the Protocol School of Washington and got certified. And that was fantastic. I loved that. I loved bringing that to the company I was working with. Was there for about 4 or 5 more years and then left and really took the public speaking part of it that I'd been doing for a long time, as well as the business etiquette, and launched Protocol. Okay. And it was my business, but I treated it more like a side hustle for a long time.
Okay,
and,
so you're working full time in addition to that?
No, I was doing that, but I was raising children and doing all that stuff.
That's a full-time job.
Yeah.
That was a full-time job. But it was just part of what I did, but it wasn't an active business in the sense that it was full-time. You know, it was when I got to it, I would work on it.
And,
sure.
Yeah, that's how I feel like most businesses start.
Yeah, yeah. And I loved it, and I wanted to make it a business, but I wasn't really sure how to. I was an English major. I taught school for a number of years.
Did you teach English?
I taught English,
Nice.
yeah. Language arts and social studies to middle schoolers, which was great preparation for working with corporate groups, because you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
And with middle school, you truly never know what you're going to get on a daily basis. So that was a good start, but I didn't have really the business acumen to launch a business. I didn't really know what I was doing. I did take a course for entrepreneurs, but it didn't mesh with who I was and where I was in my life, as well as with my business. It was primarily men who were speaking at this group, and they had a very different experience because they had someone at home sort of holding down the fort.
Whereas you had all
I
that
was the person
responsibility.
holding down the fort, and I wasn't working 18-hour days. That was just not going to be a sustainable aspect of what I was doing. So I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be an entrepreneur. It wasn't until really, around COVID, 2018, 2019, and there, that I started taking a course with Sally Holder. And who is a rock star, and realized, okay, I can be an entrepreneur and still be these other things too, and figure out how to balance it. And it's never really balanced. One of them is always getting short shrift, but identifying that and knowing that that's my business journey is that it's a little bit different from a traditional 18 to 20 hours a day, every day, and maxing out credit cards to get the business off the ground and that just wasn't where I was.
So was the experience with Sally Holder, was that like kind of what helped you get that business acumen?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. And she will say this is sort of your MBA without getting an MBA. And that really helped me focus on who my customers were, what my goals were. And since then, I don't work with her anymore, but I've taken everything I've learned from her and continued to carry it through. So that was huge for me in really solidifying what my business looked like and setting up boundaries around what that business was and not trying to be everything to everybody, which I think can be a pitfall, particularly for entrepreneurs, and especially when they're starting out. I need that cash influx to launch this or to do that. And so, yes, I'll come do whatever it is that you need me to do for your business, even if it really doesn't apply to what I do. And getting out of that mindset and being able to say no to some clients because they weren't the right fit was a huge lesson that I learned, and still learning that. Every once in a while that creeps back in of, I should just do this. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to.
That's great. And you mentioned public speaking. Is that something that you've always done, naturally good at, had to learn? Give us some history there.
I, as a public speaker, that if you went back and spoke to my parents when I was little, friends, teachers, they would... At that time, they would have been shocked that I would do anything like this.
Sure.
I was painfully shy.
That was me. I was terrible at it.
They called home, and I would panic.
My face hurt.
I had to say present. Oh my gosh, everybody's going to hear me say present. So it was really tough, and I was very quiet. I spoke very low. I didn't put myself out there. And in 6th grade, I had a teacher, Mrs. Patterson, whose daughter lives in Greenville.
Nice.
But she would sit at the back of the classroom when we had reports of any kind when I got up to speak. And I didn't get to sit down until she could hear me. And that was horrific. I mean, it was awful. But it did push me.
That's such a young age, though. 6th grade is... For me, it was like 12th grade.
It didn't occur to me to go home and complain to my parents. I just did it because that's what Miss Patterson said to do. And okay, I'll do it.
Right.
You're a teacher pleaser, so that was a good thing. And from there, I started pushing myself out a little bit. I tried out for cheerleading, which, that is loud public speaking.
Right. Outgoing.
Then I took classes, and I got to college, and I took a public speaking class. And the second time I was on stage, I completely blanked.
Really?
My mind went blank. Everything just fled. And the fact that I didn't pass out because all I could see was just black in front of my eyes. There was nothing there. But the professor...
It's like a worst nightmare.
And so I've been there. I've been in everyone's worst nightmare.
Sure.
Because I was the only freshman in the class. It was all upperclassmen. Cute upperclassmen boys, which really, just totally humiliated myself. So I've been to everybody's worst nightmare. I've done it. I'm still standing, and I'm doing it for a living now. So I feel like that gives me a little bit of a different perspective when I'm working with people, especially when they're nervous or have had a bad experience. I completely empathize with that and am able to help them move out of that.
Yeah. Do you think hitting kind of that rock bottom per se in the public speaking helped you progress later down the road?
Well, how much worse would it be? So it did. It really, being there, and then I went to work with the Buckley School of Public Speaking in Camden for a number of years, and that was really learning different techniques and things like that from Mr. Buckley was enormously helpful. And while my style is very different from what I did there, it's still about finding people where they are and getting them to move to where they need to be in a way that's comfortable to them.
Do you think that your public speaking, I guess what kept your interest with it after all those years? After you kind of failed with it, it wasn't your natural tendency. What kind of, why'd you keep...
Am I a glutton for punishment? It's really an adrenaline rush. It's bungee jumping for nerds is what I like to say. I'm not going to get out there and bungee jump, but I get up on a stage and I get that adrenaline rush that I think is what those extreme enthusiasts find. I get up in front of a group of people and it's here we go, and it's a little addictive. I like it. I still get nervous, but that's not a problem. I use that to give energy and to keep me on my toes. I don't want to get complacent about it.
I'm very similar to you in that respect. Do you get nervous at all when you're speaking? I feel like you're just like natural and you just.
I enjoy it, so I don't have a ton of nerves with that, but I get to practice it a lot.
I can't relate to that. Like no matter what, even if it's like at the Toastmasters meeting, like I'll have a little bit of nerves.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It is.
It gives you a little energy.
Yes.
And as long as you don't let it control you, it keeps you, again, from being complacent.
That's right.
And I've seen people get up on stage and they're all cool and talking and it's all about them and it's not about the audience.
Right.
Yeah, I hate when they're too cool.
Yeah.
It's like, this is like, you're putting me to sleep almost.
Yeah.
I want you to bring some energy with you. But I treat it like a football game. Like being an athlete back in high school, like game day, I was always like, you had some butterflies.
Yes.
And so that's like the only thing that gives me butterflies now. And I love that.
Well, it's the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, it is.
You're
Absolutely.
a junkie too for it.
Absolutely. That's so cool.
And it is, when you're too cool about it and too complacent, I think you forget that it's about the message and it's about the people who are listening to you.
That's right.
And you are there for their benefit and for the benefit of your message. And if you forget that and it becomes all about, I'm such a good public speaker and I'm so cool up here, then that is going to be a turnoff for your audience. And the whole point of your being there is to communicate something, and that's going to get lost.
Yeah. Are there some public speakers that you model yourself after or that you see as great examples or certain traits that you want to take from them?
I look at anyone who interviews other people because they're listening and they're bouncing their ideas from what the other person is saying. And I think so much of being a good communicator is being a good listener.
Yes.
So, it's hard to say who in particular. I look at any of the great reporters. I mean, I love Katie Couric and watching her interview people, Kristen Welker, and they listen and they can turn the conversation based on what they're hearing and go in that direction. Or if they have a specific point that they're trying to get across to their listeners, they'll stick to their guns on it.
Yeah.
So I like watching them. As far as public speakers in general, I thought about that coming in, and I can't really pinpoint anyone in particular. Yeah. But what I can tell you is I do love commencement speakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love watching them because they are there to impart wisdom and experience, and they want the people in the audience to hear what they have to say. And I love that because it is about the audience. A good commencement speaker has a message and they do whatever they can to get it across. One who isn't good is up there just sort of showcasing themselves.
Right.
And so I think that really highlights what makes a good speaker versus what makes a bad speaker is, are you caring for your message? Are you caring for your audience?
So there's also a lot of bad public speakers, and even at like a high corporate level. I'll give you an example of, I think, a pretty famous one. Mark Zuckerberg was a terrible public speaker back when that Cambridge Analytica stuff happened about 10 years ago, and he had to make public announcements. It was just as short as possible and very awkward. He's obviously gotten better at it over the years. But how would you coach someone like that that's at such like a high level and just a terrible public speaker?
First of all, figure out what's going on there. What's making them nervous? Are they unsure of their message? Are they not really excited about it? Are they trying to be someone they are not? And kind of get to the bottom of that. And then really focus on what is your message? Why is it something you're passionate about? What is important about it?
Which I think for him, there was nothing passionate about it because he was in trouble. But
if you're in trouble, acknowledge it, I guess, in that case. But you also, you have to craft your message in a way that you're getting across why whatever it is that you did or didn't do was important at the time. Not as an excuse, but still infuse your passion for the product, for the service, into whatever it is you're talking about, because that lends credibility. And if you, and I can't remember, I've seen him speak so many times.
And he's gotten so much, he's gotten a lot better over the years. It's just when he first started, about 10, 12 years ago, he was notoriously terrible.
If you're trying to hide something and the audience can tell. They can pick up on it. And I look at politicians, for example, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on, when they're selling something that's really not grounded in truth, do you think I'm an idiot? it.
Yeah.
I see it. The audience sees that.
Yeah.
And typically, especially with people who are not trying to game the system, I guess, but who are trying to get a message across, if their fear is the audience, most of the time an audience is a friendly group. Most
The
of
audience
the time.
does want to see you do well.
They want to see you do well.
That's one thing I've learned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most of them are really glad it's not them up there in the
Right.
spotlight. So they're going to forgive a lot if there's a stumble, if there's a misstep or something, as long as you own it and keep going and stay true to who you are, stay true to your message.
That's great. And we're going to dive further into that here in a second. But just to get back real quick to high school, college days, did you know what you wanted to do career-wise when you were in high school and college?
I wanted to be an attorney. I thought that I would go to law school, so I'm insanely jealous of my child. Law school.
Which school is she going to?
She's going to South Carolina.
Oh, that's great.
From Clemson.
That's
so
great.
It's
house divided for her.
It's already a house divided, but now she's getting to experience it herself.
Yeah.
But I thought I would go to law school, and I did work in a law firm for a while after college. And when I did that, I think that it was really right on the cusp of changing how women went through being an associate and becoming a partner. You know, you went through and you were on the partner track or you were on the mommy track.
Yeah.
And I worked with some women who were older, who were on the partner track, who had children, and they would come to me and say, don't do it. It's not worth it. And at the time, I didn't see past that.
Sure.
I think the women that came along at the time I would have are the ones who changed it and turned it into something that was a little bit more family friendly and not career sacrificing if you decided to become a mom. And at the time, I didn't know any better. I didn't have enough role models out there saying, oh, absolutely, continue doing that.
Sure.
So I went into teaching as an English major. That seemed a logical choice, but I also loved working with kids. So I did that for a while. I enjoyed it, but went to the Buckley School at that point, realized I really liked working with adults and helping coach people through their public speaking fears and later through helping them find their professional presence and what made them a good leader. And that's where I sort of pivoted into that and went into the business etiquette and combined that with the public speaking.
So you might have shared this. How did you get first introduced to the Buckley School?
I had stopped teaching and was working in a gift shop.
Okay.
And a woman who worked with the school had me house sitting, and her husband had gone to Davidson. I went to Davidson. She goes, what are you doing working in a gift shop with an English degree and an education master's and all? And so I'm biding my time until I find something else. And she said, well, I've got something for you.
Okay.
And she set me up with the Buckley School. And I worked there about 14 years, I guess. And towards the end, Mr. Buckley was ill and was setting up his succession plan. He asked me to be president of the school, and so he and I started working on that transition. He passed away before the transition was solidified. Things did not work out, so I went my separate way. And that's when I decided to take the business etiquette portion that was really my portion of it and add the public speaking, because I've been doing it for so long that I could do it, and also had all that experience of being a terrified public speaker and getting pushed out of my comfort zone and taking the public speaking courses in college and really finding my voice as a speaker.
Sure.
That I could combine that. So I've kind of done a couple of different things, but there's always been a teaching element to it, really.
So you feel like you're naturally like a teacher at heart.
I like doing that, yeah.
So one thing you kind of hinted on there was you had a lull period of you didn't really know what you wanted to do, which I feel like some of our audience might be stuck in that. How would you advise someone that feels like they're in that period?
I know a number of young people who are in that. I know a number of people who are my age who are in that. And I worked corporate for about 4 or 5 years. I saw that you had Gary Bernadette.
We did.
And I worked at Amico for about 5 years.
That's great.
And loved being in that corporate environment, loved the people I worked with, but knew that I didn't want to be in an HR role.
Okay.
And it was HR and training and development with them. And knew I wanted to come back out into my own business. But I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. And over the last couple of years, it's been evolving and figuring out what feeds my soul, what do I love doing based on what I'm already doing. And it's not just the public speaking or just the business etiquette. It's guiding people and moving them where they need to be in a number of different areas. And when I'm working with younger people who don't have an idea of what they want to do, it's really just having the conversation, looking for a mentor, finding a group of people who are doing the things that you're interested in, and seeing how did they convert that into a career. Is it becoming an entrepreneur? Is it finding what is feeding your passion within your job? Or, sometimes you just have to take a job.
Yeah.
And it's not the thing that feeds your soul.
Yeah.
But finding something outside of that so that you are coming to that job that you don't particularly love with your full self and giving it your all and finding out what in it does speak to you.
Yeah.
And using that as a guidepost for what is your next step.
So if I have your story correct, you started Protocol, you said, back in 2008.
Yes.
And so you took some other jobs along the route. So it wasn't always we're doing this and this is full throttle. It was we're going to do this and I enjoy it and I love it and I want to pursue it. But you also just kind of had some other additional jobs along the way. And now you are, like, you've been doing it for, 15 years now? And it's obviously grown a ton, and you've kept it alive, which is very impressive. So that's a cool little journey.
Always been, and I told you earlier, it was a side hustle to begin with. And more because I was building it and also raising a family, and my husband has his own business. So it was sort of supporting that.
Yeah.
And then, he got established. I left Amico, and even while I was at Amico, I was doing some of this on the side and decided, we're just doing it. Yeah. We are full on.
And how many years,
figuring it out.
At that point, how many years was between that and first starting it?
Oh, golly. So 2008 to 2021, 22,
okay, so,
right in there.
Yeah, over 10 years.
Yeah. And
so it's a journey.
It is a journey. And I let other things take precedence that needed to take precedence at the time. And I had the luxury of letting them take precedence. But I also had the luxury of still devoting time to Protocol.
You had the flexibility aspect.
There was some flexibility there because Protocol at that time was not paying the bills. It was there for me to figure out, and it became something completely different as I've moved along.
That's great. So when you did start Protocol, day one was probably very exciting, but lots of moving parts, I imagine. And then year one, lots of growth. So what were some of those obstacles or challenges in that first year as you were starting your business?
The first year, I remember my first client. The very first person I did a training for, and I walked in, and she said, "I don't know why I'm here. My boss is making me come to this, and I just think this is ridiculous." And not the most auspicious way to start a business. And I thought, okay, we gotta win you over.
Yeah.
And we did, and I did.
Good.
By the end of it, she said, "This was great. I didn't realize I needed all of this." So I went to where she was. I did not just immediately start, well, that's fine, but this is what we're doing, and stick to a plan.
Yeah.
The plan went out the window, and I adjusted to meet her where she was and talked through, well, why do you think that he has sent you here, and what do you hope to get out of it, because you have to be here.
Yeah.
So you have to be here because your boss sent you, so you
Right.
better make the best use of his time and his money.
Right.
Exactly. So it was, that was an obstacle. Excuse me.
Okay.
But in terms of business in general, I think it goes back to finding, what was my focus? There are a lot of people out there doing public speaking. I mean, you're doing Toastmasters. There are other people who are coaches. There are a lot of people doing business etiquette. What makes mine a little bit different? How do I, what is my value that's separate from other people's? And part of it is my experience as a terrible public speaker starting out, and really nailing that down over the years, because I wanted to build my business, and I thought by building my business that meant I needed to get as many clients as I could.
Which makes sense.
And I like that.
Yeah, and you have to grow appropriately, which is humbling.
You have to grow appropriately, and you have to know when to say no, and you build a little scar tissue. I've got some clients that probably I should not have taken on over the years. And that was a learning experience. And at this point, I'm now able to say, this is not what I do. And really focus on what it is that I do, what value I bring, as opposed to just trying to be everything to everyone to get my business moving.
Gotcha.
That's good.
So as part of your coaching, whenever you are coaching somebody, one of my worst fears would be I forget things when I'm nervous occasionally. I think we can all, maybe not you, but there's a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, we all do.
If I were to be up giving a speech and were to could just completely blank, not like to where I'm passing out, but just to the point where I actually don't know what I was supposed to say.
Yeah.
Like, how would you coach someone to handle that kind of mistake? I feel like that's worst case scenario. There could be obviously worse mistakes, but
I think it's worst case scenario.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'm up here for.
And really, again, we talked about the audience being a friendly group, and you're just experiencing their worst nightmare for them. So bring them along on that journey with you.
Yeah.
I'm having a moment, and if you've ever been on stage, you probably understand this moment, and really communicate with them, let them in on it, get the audience on your side, and just tell them, because that diffuses some of the tension within you when you're not trying to hide it from them. I think part of it is I can't let them know anything. If you tell them I'm having a moment, I bet many of you have been here. Give me a second to check my notes. And I'm a big fan of notes.
Yeah,
I think
notes
it's
are a
important
great
to
thing.
have them. Even if you don't use them, it's a way, if you're totally comfortable on stage, of keeping you on track and not bird walking.
Keeping structured organization.
Yes.
Because I struggle with organization. She gets on me about the podcast because I'll take it wherever. And she's like, we need to have an organization to it.
And we have so many guests. I'm like, let's put them on a spreadsheet. Let's make sure we know who we're interviewing. So it's a good thing. We're a team, though. There's things he helps me with. So it goes
good
both
action
ways.
item I'm getting from these insights is something that would help me is I'm always fearing worst case scenario. What do I do if I freeze? Well, if I practice the freeze, if I practice a situation where I forget, then I think I'll feel more comfortable because, hey, if worst case comes up, I feel comfortable in that situation because I've practiced it.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good action item for me that I'm going to take in my public speaking preparations.
Having a plan for what happens if it all goes south.
Yes, having that plan, yeah.
And then the other thing is breathing and just taking that moment, because a lot of times when you start to get nervous, your chest gets tight. If your chest gets tight, then your breathing gets shallow. If your breathing gets shallow, you're not getting enough oxygen. And panic is a response to lack of oxygen.
So that's why my breathing kind of changes sometimes, because your chest gets tight.
And pause, take a deep breath, and try to release all that. And it really does help. Taking that pause, don't fill it up with but just a pause.
Has anyone ever come to you because they struggle with their face turning red when they're speaking? Because that's something I've struggled with that. I don't know how to turn it on, how to turn it off. Sometimes I'm not nervous and it happens. Sometimes I'm nervous and it doesn't. Like, I don't know. And
some people just naturally, they start to get nervous or a little bit of stress or in a situation that may be new to them, and they immediately start turning red.
Yeah.
My sister does that. Her neck gets red when she starts getting stressed out about something or passionate about something even. And I don't really know. The breathing, preparation, all of those things, that's more of a physiological response that I don't know if you can control that or not.
Yeah, I think breathing could definitely help. But one of my biggest struggles in high school particularly, like if the teacher was cold calling, oh my goodness, like I'm reading assignments or something, and if I got cold called, my face would be immediately just like so pink. And I was like, there's nothing I can do about it. It was so frustrating. And when I felt it getting pink, it turned more pink. And so I think it was the worst. It was the absolute worst. But over time, I think just more experience, being more comfortable with myself, trying not to care. Like, I know my face is red, but I'm going to continue speaking. Like, it just takes a lot of experience, I guess. And that has gone down over time. But I was curious if there's a coaching thing to get across that.
I do think the more you focus on it, the worse it gets.
Probably so.
And trying to divert your attention to something else. Right. And part of that is preparation, too. And being prepared. And knowing, too, like you said, practicing that worst case scenario, it's a pressure valve. It releases some of that pressure that might contribute to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. One of Heath's favorite speaking points is STAR, something they'll always remember.
One of that Toastmasters, yeah.
A Toastmaster signature. So how have you seen that in action in the speaking world?
I think when you're passionate about what you're talking about, or some element of it.
Yeah.
You know, you might be in sales and you're talking about a medical device that's just not very exciting. I had a client who worked for a company that discovered the human genome.
Oh,
and
whoa.
one of the scientists was going to be out there speaking, and that was the last thing he wanted to be doing.
Wow.
His face turned the color of these walls, sort of gray, and he could not get above a whisper when he was speaking.
Yeah.
And finally I said, well, what is the big deal about the human genome? I mean, is this like discovering a new planet or a new element? What is this? And he started explaining it to me. And the more he started talking, the more animated he became, the louder and more articulate he became, because he was so excited about the possible medical repercussions of it and the healing that it would create. And just on and on, he got so excited about that. And that's where his passion was. And that's what led him forward into, okay, I can do this because I need other people to understand why this is important. And if I keep all that information to myself, then I'm doing the world, really, a disservice. So it's finding your passion and really using that as a springboard for your communication, because that's what's memorable. Is when you're excited or there's some element of it that is important to your audience or to you, and you want to communicate that importance. That's really where you leave your audience with something that they're going to remember.
Gotcha. So I guess going back to your business that you've started, what have been the most difficult parts of kind of keeping that alive over the years? I'm sure there's been times where you've thought about quitting. I mean, there's been times where I've thought about quitting the podcast and we're just getting started. So I guess is it like, I don't know, just what would be some of the most difficult things?
Okay.
Yeah. Looking at being a solo entrepreneur. Like I told you earlier, I work from home and I'm by myself a lot, and suits me fine because I'm also an extreme introvert.
There you go.
And getting out and building connections has been something that I have to be very focused on, and building those relationships. And there have been times I thought, I'm tired of doing this by myself. And I do have a business partner now that I work with occasionally.
That's great.
And he and I are working on an online course that we're launching in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
But that has been an important part of it, because I really lost momentum sometimes over the years because I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off. Seeking out business groups, seeking out mentors, other entrepreneurs who are in the same boat, business coaches, that has been huge in helping me keep my momentum strong. I know you have the Greenville Ladies.
Yes, we do.
I love that.
Thank you.
And
it's fun.
That's important.
Yes.
Finding a sense of community. The opposite too, though, has been a challenge for me, and that's boundaries. And working from home means that I am home and I don't have official office hours, so that other things can impinge on that from a non-work perspective, but it also means at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, I might be working. So trying to set boundaries around what needs to have boundaries has been the other side of that.
Yeah, that's very entrepreneurial spirited to be like. I guess when you work from home, you could be working at all hours of the day, and it's how do you turn it off? I guess was it compartmentalized? I guess.
Yeah. And I try to keep my work mostly down in my basement where my desk is. It's currently a storage area for dorm and apartment stuff. So I've moved up to the kitchen table and the dining room table, and that physical creep through the house has also turned into, let's just check emails, or let's just work on this Canva document or something. So I need to pull it all back into one physical space and let that be my boundary.
Yeah. I would imagine that your daughter that's going to law school has had a huge advantage just learning from you, because in law school you're obviously going to be like debating people or speaking out in front of classes and stuff, and public speaking is very important for an attorney. So,
it is. And I work with
cool.
several different law offices with public speaking and professional presence and the business etiquette as well. And I think, looking at both of my daughters, they have seen me build this business and go from it being just sort of something that mom does on the side to this is an official business.
Right.
This is working and
Right. Full time.
you know, it's all the time, and both of them have very strong voices in different ways. And I like that they have seen me coach people to find their own voice. And I think that's really driven them to each figure out what theirs is. And both very different, which sometimes I think, how? I raised you.
We can relate to that. I have one sister, 18 months apart. We couldn't be more different. We appreciate the differences, but we ask the same question.
But I do think that they've seen me do that, and I hope that it's had an impact on what they do.
It has, I'm sure.
So,
Obviously, starting a business is no easy feat. You have to go through obstacle after obstacle, and to continue it for as long as you have. I mean, you've demonstrated perseverance at like the ultimate level. So, what does the term Carolina grit mean to you when you see other leaders in the areas kind of going through the same journeys?
Stubborn. In fact, I work with Barbara Stone in their Can Talks, and I worked with a man last year who was blind and deaf.
Really?
And which was a fantastic experience. But he gave me my sign. So it's not just spelling out my name, but my sign is the sign for stubborn. And he picked up on that. So that being stubborn and not letting the dips in momentum get you down, but then also being willing to take risks and knowing that it doesn't necessarily define you if you fail.
Right.
Learn from it, get up, move on to the next thing. So the stubbornness and the persistence certainly go hand in hand. And being able to take risks over the years, I think my innate stubbornness has helped me stay the course on it, for sure.
So if there is a young professional, say a lady in her mid-20s that wants to follow your route and start her own business and knows there's a long journey ahead, what's the one thing that you hope that she would take out of your story?
Don't be afraid to take risks. Absolutely. Just get out there and do it. And if you fail, look at it as, okay, what did I learn from this? And use that for the next step.
Yeah. Which the famous Michael Jordan quote is, I've failed over and over again, and that is why I succeed. So we can attest to that, and I love that quote. We have to fail to learn, and learning is what helps us succeed. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, Caroline, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing all your insight with us, and we're excited to share your story.
Thank you, Caroline.